Hey guys, it's Beth. Welcome back to my channel, and today I'm just back with a project share for the October Sheetload of Cards from Call Me Crafty Owl. This is the first project that I made using my Pine Street square pad from the Paper Studio. And if you haven't heard of the Sheetload of Cards concept, it's really cool. Call Me Crafty Owl here on YouTube takes the time to put together not only a card sketch, but a supply list and a cut list for you. And so she tells you how much you need of each piece of cardstock, pattern paper, whatever, and then what to cut them to. So it's really cool. And I like to start out my pad projects with them just because it's an easy way just to kind of get a feel for the paper and get my juices flowing. So her Sheetload sketch each month, usually she gives you the guidelines for and the supplies for what you need to make a certain amount of cards, and that depends on the sketch she gives you. This month it's actually kind of like a fancy fold card, like a Z fold. And so she gives you the supplies and instructions to make 8 cards. Mine varies just a little bit from her original sketch. If you see here, this would be the inside of the card, and you have like a pattern paper piece here on the inside and then 2 thinner pieces that go on the other half of the card. And she has you cut like all 3 pieces out of the same piece of 12 by 12, and then you just have 4 different patterns essentially. And so you're going to have you should be able to mix and match those patterns when you're building your card. I just made it easier for myself since I had plenty of paper to use out of this pad. I did the same pattern for each piece. So you'll see that here. I used like this Christmas or this burlap Christmas word pattern for what would be the inside of my card. I have the reindeer, it's like a plaid reindeer on a green wood background for that hidden panel, and then this burlap with the red polka dots as my front. So I just kept it consistent. They're all the same that way for me. The other way I varied, and she actually lists it as an alternative, so it's not really that much of a variance, but down here it says, you know, it's a good place for an image or a sentiment, and it's a piece of cardstock that's layered on pattern paper and then more cardstock. I actually had some journaling cards that I found on clearance, and they're just called pocket cards, and they don't say they're Pine Street Square, but they match the patterns really well from this pad, but some of the colors are off a little bit from the pad, but a lot of the patterns are the same, and so I'm using them. I found 2 sets on clearance for like $2.50, so $2.50 each, so it was a pretty good deal because they had 36 in them, and they're double-sided, so if you can't use one side, hopefully you can use the other. So I took the easy way out on here, but because I also wanted to be able to use those up. And then the other place I varied just a little bit is she has you cut each pattern paper panel 1/4 of an inch smaller than what your cardstock or your card base panel would be. I just did 1/8 of an inch just to kind of tighten up that difference a little bit. So not a huge variance, just kind of my preference. So her sketch and instructions allowed you to make 8 cards. I doubled that because I had 2 of each of the journal cards, so I did 2 sets of 8. They're exactly the same. And I will kind of walk you through one set here real quick. But this first one just says joy to the world. And then I used a craft card base for all of them, and then also used craft cardstock to mat my journal card here, and then craft to go on this back panel so you can have a place to write a message. And then I also just stamped holiday wishes as a sentiment on all of them. And I did it up here to the top because I wanted to allow space that you could still write a message. I was worried because of the size of it, if I put it in the middle, you would have just enough room to like write somebody's name and then your name. So I kind of was trying to figure out which corner I wanted to put it in. I kind of played with that for a while and just settled on the top left, and then you can write a message in there to the recipient. So that's the first one. This one just says season's greetings. And then there were a couple that had like this, I don't know if you can see it, but it's a kind of a craft background, but it's like a lighter craft than what my cardstock was. And so this jar was on that lighter craft background. Like that was the rest of the journal card, and I hated how it looked against my craft cardstock. So I just fussy cut the jar out. And then there was a handful of journal cards that had actual journaling lines on it, and I knew I wasn't going to use them for the journal lines because I'm not making a scrapbook or any scrapbook pages, and so I just used it as a piece of background paper on this one. So I fussy cut my jar out and then layered it on the back of one of the other journal cards, and I think this is one of my favorites just because I love the plaid and I love the jar. Two of my favorite things, plaid and mason jars. So there's that one. And then this one was the same way. It had like that funky light craft background on the rest of the journal card, and I really didn't like it. So I fussy cut around the wreath, like a very loose fussy cut, almost like a scallop circle. And it's not symmetrical in any way. I was just kind of doing a scallop or, a rounded cut around each of the holly leaves in the wreath. And again, just layered it on the back of another journal card I knew I wasn't going to use, and that became that one. This one doesn't have a sentiment on the front of it, which I'm fine with since I do have holiday wishes on the inside. And then this one say, may your days be merry and bright. Dashing through the snow. And then 'tis the season to be jolly. And then I have a whole nother set up here that are exactly the same. But if you haven't already subscribed, if you're not already subscribed to Call Me Crafty Al's channel, I will include a link to her channel and probably even her October Sheetload video, just so you can get some more information about it. But she is nice enough to put this Sheetload sketch and supply cut list together for all of her subscribers most months, and I really appreciate all the time and effort that she puts into it, because there are some times when you don't necessarily want to think. You just want to craft. You don't want to have to think so hard about it. So that is one reason why I like to start out a pad project with the sketch, just because it helps me get a feel for the paper, it gets my juices flowing, and sometimes trying to figure out where to start with the pad is the hardest part. And so I kind of now know, since she started this, that I'm going to start it with the Sheetload, and it just kind of, I don't know, it helps me get into the flow of things. I also love it because there are times when I want to craft or I really need to craft, and the mojo's not there or the brain capacity isn't there. Like, there are so many times where I need to craft for therapeutic purposes, but my brain is just so full of other things and it cannot focus. And all I have to do when she gives us the sheet loads, all I have to do is just pick my papers. Like, she makes it so easy. And Alicia, I so appreciate all of the time and energy you put into this. I love it, and I know a lot of people do. So, and it's also great for beginner crafters because, again, she gives you all the measurements, all the things that you need. My daughter, my 8-year-old, loves to use them as well. So anyway, that is my share for today. I made 16 Christmas cards out of my Pine Street Square pad. So that's the kind of the first project this go round from this pad. I had started it last winter. If you missed my preview video, I had started this last winter, but just with the craft shows and the busyness, I didn't get to finish it. So I decided to save it and work on it again this year because I really did love it. And so this is kind of the first project this year with it. So hope you guys enjoyed that, and I thank you so much for your time today, and I hope you're having a crafty week.